Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Red Leaf Card, your home for Canadian soccer news and topics. I'm your host, Jacob. On this episode, we'll be discussing on predictions in the Canadian Premier League, Canadian Championship, which cities should get an expansion team for the Canadian Premier League. But but first, here are your fixtures rundown. In the CONCACAF Champions League, LAFC wins against the Vancouver Whitecaps 6-0 in aggregate. Philadelphia Union beats Atlas FC 3-2 on aggregate. Club Lyon beats Violette AC 6-2 on aggregate. Tigres beats FC Montagua 6-0 on aggregate. In Major League Soccer, Club de Foot Montreal loses to DC United 1-0. Toronto FC draws with Atlanta United 2 apiece. And Vancouver Whitecaps draws with Austin FC scoreless. In the Canadian Premier League of the season opener, for their fifth season, Atletico Ottawa draws with Halifax Wanderers with 1 apiece. Forge FC draws with Calgary FC 2 goals for each. Pacific FC wins to Vancouver FC for which beating the expansion team 1-0. And now, on to the topics in hand is what we're going to see for the predictions in the Canadian Premier League. And we do have a guest alongside of me, Jason.
Jacob, thank you for having me on. It was a good week for Canadian Premier League, and we have a lot of soccer to be able to talk about, so looking forward to getting this party started.
Well, it is always exciting for the Canadian Premier League to come back. Like, I just get addicted to watching their games, and just always figuring out about their game, their season openers. I think that it's growing fast. I've heard the attendance for their season opener. Atletico Ottawa brought in 7,000 fans for the first game. In Hamilton, they brought in like almost 6,000 fans, almost to 7,000. And in Pacific FC, they brought in a sold-out crowd, which I think like 4,000 fans. But their place actually sold out.
Oh, I mean, the product on the pitch over the last few years has gotten better and better and better with every season, which is really, really good. It's good to see Ottawa draw in those crowds, because coming from Ottawa, it's a bit of a fickle population when it comes to sports. The Senators normally do well, except when they're not playing well. And we saw that, last season and the beginning of this season, people aren't going out to Canada to see a team that's going to be at the bottom of the league all the time. The fact that Atletico Ottawa is coming off of a season where they topped the table in the regular season, it's fever pitch, right? We're talking about a city, though, that lost not only the Rough Riders, but the Renegades as well. So I'm glad to see Ottawa drawing in the crowds. I'm just hoping that they can keep the momentum built off of last year so the crowds will continue to come out. The nice thing, too, with them is they're playing, pretty much close to downtown. It's not like the Senators, being way out in Canada. It's a very easily accessible stadium for them to be playing in. People love to go out there. It's a great environment. Pacifica, that's the one that really got my attention because it's a smaller stadium. It's a gorgeous area around it, but they're selling out. It's really good to see.
When I always hear Pacifica or Canada, I'm like, well, using native language.
Well, I mean, Pacific FC, the thing with Victoria is you have a lot of sports out there, but none of them are like the major leagues. You don't have an MLS Victoria team. Yes, you have like the Victoria Royals as far as the WHL goes. You've got Pacific FC as far as Canadian Premier League goes, but Victoria has proven that they will embrace the sports that come to them.
When talking about Ottawa, I think that not just mentioning the Ottawa teams that we lost. Don't forget that Ottawa Fury team that we lost. I think lots of people. I think lots of Ottawa Atletico Ottawa fans might be kind of mad when I bring up Ottawa Fury about this, but I think the fans should know that it's the owner's fault for breaking the rules.
Well, I think too, there's it's not necessarily the team's fault, and it's definitely not the fans' fault. But I do think, you take a look at the Ottawa Lynx, the baseball team that was the AAA affiliate of the Montreal Expos. It was a perfect location for them. The ballpark that was built for them is great. And they did very well. They won a championship in AAA, but eventually, the team was moved for reasons. But it's the history of Ottawa sports teams, coming and going. The Ottawa Rebel, the lacrosse team that was in the National Lacrosse League, there for like 2 seasons. They were actually the cover team on the PlayStation 1 lacrosse video game. And then they were gone.
Kind of shocking there, but you know what I just love about Atletico Ottawa? It is that, it is like some fans would not like the name Atletico because it's a Spanish associated team in Madrid, but fans need to know that when your team is no longer, that it's dissolved, you sometimes it is a big associated team that's which is in Madrid, and they're everywhere. For example, in Mexico, for example, they just expanded in Liga MX in San Luis, and I just look at the fans right now. They get used to it. They just got used to it. They just think that, it's exactly like Ottawa Fury, but with a different brand, and it's bigger.
Oh, absolutely. Despite the fact that you use the term like Atletico and instantly you think, CONCACAF teams, Liga MX teams. You look at MLS, right? You've got Real Salt Lake, right? I hear Real, I think Madrid, maybe, but it's I have no problem with them, taking words that are, almost lexicon when it comes to soccer teams and adopting them into smaller clubs in smaller cities, in comparison to like a Real Madrid or in comparison to any of the Atleticos down in Mexico. Like, I'm totally fine with that so long as the fans continue to come out and support the teams so the team can continue to build that tradition that the fans can enjoy from generation to generation.
Yeah, and I just can't believe that now they're actually... fans are now growing to like the Canadian Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about Forge FC. Will they succeed to growing? Maybe so. It's just going to be the same fan attendees, but they just got 6,000 fans on their season opener.
Mm-hmm. And you think about, I mean, obviously, Hamilton always has been, always will be home with the Ticats. But I mean, they've embraced the Bulldogs. They've embraced Forge. The fact that they're now playing host to the Rock, it's no longer the Toronto Rock, even though they're still called the Toronto Rock. The fact that they're still playing in Hamilton, like Hamilton is almost at a fever pitch for sports, and it's good to see smaller markets embrace their teams. In a city like Toronto, it would be lost. It would be lost in the minutia of anything that's not Blue Jays, Raptors, or Leafs.
Even if you talk about Halifax Wanderers, every single time if you go, for example, try to go to Halifax Wanderers games, it's going to be packed. 6,500 fans every single time. And it's always hyped for it, and there's always this. They want to expand more attendees, trying to make their own. They try to make their get a new soccer field for 8,000, and they're still waiting.
I think the nice thing about having the team in Halifax is that you're servicing a market that's not exactly served by the other leagues. Yes, the CEBL is out there. They're out in the Maritimes, but the CFL isn't. Major League Soccer isn't. National Hockey League isn't. Yes, the QMJHL is out there with teams like the Halifax Mooseheads and Rimouski Oceanic. Like, yes, Quebec and the Maritimes are merged there, but I also appreciate that it's a logistics issue. To go from Halifax to Victoria, that's a long haul. This is not exactly a small country. You can't just hop the bus and go from coast to coast in a couple of hours. You have to hop on the planes, fly. Air Canada has proven that it's not exactly the best, right? But even teams that have the money to be able to put their minor league affiliates out there, the Ottawa Senators used to have their AHL affiliate in the Maritimes, and then they moved them down to Binghamton, New York, and then they moved them to Belleville, obviously to get the team closer, so it's a little bit easier to get their players up to Ottawa whenever they have to do call-ups. But the fact that they were out there, and they were doing well, and the fans loved them out there, and then they get pulled. It's a big country. Everything needs to be represented. The Maritimes having Halifax, it's great for them. It's great for the CPL. I would love to see more out there.
Yeah, when you realize that transportation on flight or taking the bus is actually really expensive in Canada.
Yeah. Plus the fact that you have, large bodies of water in the way as far as taking the bus out to Halifax. But I mean, it's tough, right? And when you think about something like the CFL, I know there's always been talk about getting out to Atlantic Canada, getting a team out there. They talk about it over and over and over again, and nothing happens. Even when they were having the Atlantic Canada series where CFL teams would go and play games out there, great, that's fine for one game, but follow up.
Game today, we're still hoping what's going to be like the atmosphere at Vancouver FC's home game.
I like the fact that they didn't start at home, right? Their first game is in Victoria. They're playing up the whole interprovincial rivalry, playing against Pacific FC. I will say, though, in watching that game, there's a lot to be. They got to build up better, and they have a few games to get out of the way before they get home. So I'm hoping that those next couple of road games is going to give them a chance to work out the kinks, tighten up their game, because it was a 1-0 finish. It should have been much more. Pacific dominated that game.
Yeah. I was kind of shocked. I was kind of shocked that they did do. I think Vancouver FC should have also give credit. Also, how they actually played well. That they didn't allow that much goals on their first game.
Well, I mean, the one goal that Irving let in, I mean, I'll give him credit. Like he was, there was a lot of pressure around the net. There's a lot of offensive zone pressure from Pacific, but I mean, yes, they only allow one goal. Irving made some good saves. So did the crossbar. So did the woodwork. Right, like a post and a crossbar. This game should have been at least 3-0. Irving was beat a couple times. It's only just unfortunate aim on Pacific's part that it wasn't a massive blowout. So while it would have been nice to see them start the season at home and get that atmosphere, I think working the kinks out with this brand new team that's playing together for the first time, obviously they played preseason, but playing a regular season game for the first time, let them get the kinks out on the road. So by the time you come home for game 4, you're feeling a lot better.
Yeah, I always think about it. It's just like every single time when I see those shots on target crossbar, that the crossbar saved the goal. I feel like is the goal net actually doing all the saves.
Well, I mean, if that's the case, then just maybe put the net on payroll. But I mean, think about this, right? Their first 3 games before they make it home, right? You've got the road game against Pacific FC, escaping with just a 1-0 loss. You've got games then against York and Halifax. And against Halifax, they might actually have a chance. It remains to be seen how they're going to do against York. But that first home game, week 4, is against Cavalry. That's a good team that you have to show up for. So you got 2 more games to get it together before you have to play at home against Cavalry.
Yeah, sooner or later you're going to get big name teams. Even for example, how they're going to do well against Forge.
There's the question, right? Like between Cavalry and Forge, and there's their second home game after Cavalry is against Ottawa. Again, team that was at the top of the table last year. Those are 2 really tough games. Now, that being said, Ottawa didn't look like the world beaters they were last year, in their first game against Halifax. But it's a tough 2-game stretch when you finally get home. I think the adrenaline of the moment is going to carry them to the first game. I don't know if they're going to win against Cavalry. I'm hoping that they will have at least scored a goal before they get home. Because if you go the first 3 games in this season and you haven't scored a goal yet, and you get home and you're playing against Cavalry, the pressure's going to be on even more. So if they can score against York or Halifax before that week 4 matchup, then I think that takes the pressure off a little bit. But if they're goalless going into that home opener, I don't think it's going to go well for them.
Yeah, what do you think about that? But still, when they get to their next match, it's still another match that's kind of ignored. Is that Wednesday is going to be, I think, on the 18th and 19th. Still have to play the Canadian Championship.
Right. So, yes, while that home opener is, still week 4, yeah, you do have the Canadian Championship. That's the April 18th to 20th weekend. Vancouver, it's funny, they've got York in that first round. So it's going to be interesting to see how that how that game plays up against their road game against them on the CPL schedule. It's kind of like how you've got Halifax and Ottawa playing in week 1, and then you have them facing each other in the first round of the Canadian Championship. For a team like Ottawa, it's the pressure's on now. You did well last year, top of the table, made it to the finals. And then your first game, it's a draw. Ollie Bassett looked good. The rest of the team, not so much. Their defensive zone coverage was horrific. Halifax looked so much better than their record last year. Now you got to play them again in the first round of the Canadian Championship.
Yeah, when I think about the Atletico Ottawa that against Halifax Wanderers, I feel like they in the first round, actually the first half, they were just cruising around. That they were not doing actually well, but the matter of fact is they did have a lot of shot attempts, and but Halifax gets the opening goal. Now you think about now Atletico Ottawa is thinking, now we have to respond to that.
Mm-hmm.
And Ollie Bassett actually gets a goal from the ending of the first half.
Yeah, it's a good way to close out the first half. Like find the back of the net, even it up, and then be able to start with a much fresher mindset than if you scored first and then you give up the late goal.
And when I think about when I saw Atletico Ottawa versus Halifax, I think that match really, I think is a question mark from the refs of ignoring the handball.
Well, I mean, you could hear the crowd booing when that game went full time.
Yeah, and when I seen Johnny Dos Santos, that getting basically trying to get tripped, I knew it was not going to be a PK because he just wanted to fall. And he got a yellow card for it. But I really do see that it was a definite PK when Fernandez actually had contact with the ball on his hand. But there's no VAR in the Canadian Premier League. That is a bummer. Still hoping in the future that the Canadian Premier League might actually get a VAR.
I just wonder how many more cameras they're going to need around the stadium for that. There's a cost to it.
Yeah, it's always a cost to it. It has to basically financially grow of the league, and even, for example, even getting more referees for it. That's the biggest problem when you're starting of a league. That you have to make money.
Oh yeah,
to get all these things.
Now, history is littered with leagues that come and go, and they don't think about the overall cost of the everything. Anyone who remembers the Canadian Baseball League, they didn't even make it through the first season. They got to the All-Star game at the halfway point, and because they didn't have enough money, they basically said, okay, well, whoever wins the home run derby wins the entire Canadian Baseball League championship. Do you know how many home runs were hit in that CBL championship? One home run in the home run derby. That's how that league ended.
In the home run derby.
In the home run derby at the halfway point of the first season because they ran out of money. You had teams.
Crazy.
You had teams in like markets that could have handled it, like a London, but then you had teams like Trois Rivières. And I'm not saying that Trois Rivières didn't support their team, but I'm saying that league was poorly mismanaged, and CPL's proven that they're doing things right. You've got an 8-team league. It's manageable. You have them in markets that have the population. That's good. You have a very good television product that's going online with One Soccer. That's great. It looks awesome. Kudos to them. I would just like to see One Soccer broadcast get picked up and put on regular TV, because right now, the soccer fans will get One Soccer. The casual fan, that's who you have to get. And yes, CPL games occasionally get shown. I remember CBC was picking them up, especially during the pandemic when they had that tournament. But
usually I see that island games during the pandemic. Usually it was actually on a Hamilton website. What was it? CH something?
Oh, CHCH. Yeah. I mean, yeah, CHCH is going to cover it on the news. All we need,
if you go on the website.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, though, you have it on a streaming site already, so you're not going to expect something like a Fubo or something like that to be able to pick it up, because that's another streaming site. So why pay for 2 streaming sites? Just pay for the original. You almost need a game of the week on terrestrial TV.
Yeah. When I was hear about it, of trying to bring it into major sport broadcasts, One Soccer has reported about that on CRTC, wasn't it?
Well, CRTC is the Canadian Radio and Telecommunications Commission.
Or,
like I said, CBC has shown games in the past.
Yeah, but where they wanted to, when One Soccer wanted to bring in to broadcasting, and they also wanted to bring into Rogers and Bell into it. Now TELUS is now involved with the Canadian Premier League.
I could see TELUS getting involved in that. I could also see maybe a company like Chorus maybe getting in as well. There are TV partners out there to dance with. I just think the minute you get maybe it's global. Maybe Chorus, using their global cross Canada networks, finds a way to find a home with them and partner with One Soccer. I don't know. It'd be good to see.
But when you think about Rogers and Bell, Vancouver Whitecaps is no longer with Bell, and because of their sponsorship, it expired. They decided, you know what, we're going to go with TELUS. And Pacific FC, now their sponsor jersey kit is TELUS. It's no longer with Volkswagen.
No, it's clearly making a play in as far as that goes, because if the product on the pitch is good, and the product that One Soccer is putting out is good,
even when you realize that TELUS sponsors a Canadian Premier League team that even beat the Vancouver Whitecaps in the Canadian Championship.
Oh, there's a dark horse in this Canadian Championship that, I'm not going to lie, I could easily see making it to at least the semifinals, if maybe not the finals.
Yeah, I always see like future sponsorships going to the Canadian Premier League. Like, for example, I think Electronic Arts, that in the Electronic Arts Canada.
Mm-hmm.
So They just actually sponsored a team in League One BC, which used to be named Victoria. Actually, Victory, wasn't it? A Victory FC.
Well, it makes sense that EA Sports would sponsor a team with League One British Columbia because, if memory serves, they've got the studio out in Richmond, BC. So EA Sports has always been, very, not helpful, but very, very thankful for the way that the British Columbia community around there has always supported them, and they support the city. Like it's a very beneficial relationship. So it's nice to see EA Sports, especially considering, the just how connected it can be. It's nice to see a large company like that with a very popular brand name get into that game.
And when I think about it, is fans are just hoping that to license their league in their video games. And I'm always like this. I would play their games if they just licensed the Canadian Premier League in their video games.
I'm curious now, and I haven't really done the research on this yet, but there was the Soccer Manager video game, and I don't know if CPL is actually involved in that, but that would be really cool to see.
You mean the Football Manager?
Yeah.
Which Sega makes, right?
I think they make that. But I mean,
because I do have the game Football Manager that you could play. You could play one of the Canadian Premier League. And it is actually made by Sega.
I mean, there's the thing. Surprisingly, it's fascinating to know just how much video games play into the casual fan being, being interested. I mean, we mentioned the Ottawa Rebel lacrosse team. I guarantee you, if I had seen a copy for sale of the old PlayStation 1 lacrosse league video game with an Ottawa Rebel player on it, yeah, I would have picked it up. I probably still would pick it up today if I ever saw that at a video game store. But, aside from like the Maddens and the NHLs, where you have like the big name players on there, smaller leagues being involved in games like a Football Manager, or I know NHL Eastside Hockey Manager is out there as well, as far as getting smaller, junior league teams in there. That's going to play greatly for people who love any league, really any league. Football Manager is a game where anyone who loves the Bundesliga, anyone who loves the Canadian Premier League, anyone who loves La Liga, or any of these other smaller leagues, they're big in their country, but smaller on the global scale. If they're in the game and everyone can play the game, it grows the league's presence by its mere being there.
Yeah, I do agree with that. But on to predictions.
Get the crystal ball out.
Who do you think that? What is your prediction on this season's Canadian Premier League?
Okay, obviously it's Forge's year, right? Like Forge has proven time and time again that they are, the beast of the entire league, and really, Forge, I think, enters the year every year as the team on top that everyone wants to take down. If we're taking a look at just the first week, and admittedly we're recording this on Sunday of week 1, so York has not played their game yet, so we don't know the outcome of the York Valor game and how they look. But just taking a look at what we saw on the pitch from Saturday of week 1, Ottawa does not look as good as their record looked last year. I don't know if this is just an outlier or if it's just a slower start, but I think Ottawa is not going to be the player that they were as far as determining things last year. The Forge Cavalry match that happened in week 1, That feels to me like it may as well just have been, the final for the CPL. Like you had two very good teams, both seemingly trying to make a statement to each other, as in, we're going to make sure that we know and we make it known that we're here to win. Both teams, both. Cavalry came out firing on this one. Like the Cantave goal from literally another area code. It was a phenomenal goal, right? I mean, Carducci did well in nets. Yes, he caused the penalty shot. But Cavalry looked good.
Yeah. Yeah, my prediction for what about regular season and playoff? Because you have two that are going to go to the CONCACAF Champions League.
If we're just focusing on Canadian Premiership or the Canadian Premier League, it comes down between Forge and Cavalry for me. It really does. I would not be surprised to see Cavalry really make the jump this year. Like, if I had to put, we'll say $1, because I don't want to put too much money down. But if I had to put $1 down on this, I could see Cavalry winning the Canadian Premier League this year. I don't know if they would win, if they'd be top of the table. That might be Forge. But I think Cavalry's got it this year.
So basically saying not Forge this time.
Not Forge. I'm not saying the Forge isn't in the mix, but I'm thinking this is Cavalry's year to really, shine and stand out on top.
Because for the regular season, playoffs, or for the North Star Shield, you think Cavalry could do it?
I absolutely do. I mean, there's something to be said, too, about just how much soccer Forge has played lately, right? Being the Canadian Premier League champions 3 out of the last 4 seasons, and then, they're playing in CONCACAF, and Forge has been busy. And that does take a toll after a while. We go back to hockey, you're seeing it really this year with the Tampa Bay Lightning. They're limping into the playoffs. And that's having been to the finals three straight years, winning 2 of them.
When I always look at Tampa Bay Lightning versus Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm like, are they actually acting like this against the Maple Leafs in the regular season and just beat them into playoffs? It actually kind of happens like that.
Well, I don't think they're purposely playing rope-a-dope on this, but I mean, Andrei Vasilevsky has proven to be just an absolute playoff beast. He'll get you there in the regular season. The President's Trophy, I don't think really means anything to them, but playoff Vasilevsky is huge. Playoff Braden Point, always a gamer. And I think that's the thing with Forge, too. It doesn't matter what they do in the regular season as long as they make the playoffs. Because as soon as they get to the postseason, Forge turns it up a notch.
Yeah, you usually you see sometimes in the Canadian Premier League, usually regular season winners, they don't usually actually win the North Star Shield.
No.
They don't. It's like this effect always that do we actually get to see, but it is that question, do we get to see a team actually winning the regular season and the playoff season? The playoff
I don't think that happens this year. I as much as I think Cavalry has a phenomenal team, I have a feeling that Forge still stands out as the best of the lot. But I think Cavalry, they showed it in the first week, just how much they want this, how hungry they are.
Like, and not to bring it in, but now when you look at the playoffs, how it's structured. First place is going to be versus second place, and the ones that loses still get a second chance now.
Yeah.
And the winners just goes to the finals.
See, I don't hate that. I have no problem with, if you're on a lesser tier, you got to, have another go at it kind of thing. But I mean, is it still too early to tell? Yes. Like, I'm reserving judgment on Pacific because they're playing an expansion team. They looked good, but you look good against an expansion team, and you were playing at home. It's not like you were playing in their barn, right? Ottawa, again, still game one, but I'm trepidatious in how good they're going to be this year, and we have not seen York or Valor play as of our recording of this show.
Yeah, sooner or later.
Yeah, right. But again, if it's my loony on the table, I'm saying Cavalry's got this.
So, who do you think is going to be in the 5?
Okay.
5 in the playoffs.
5 in the playoffs. I mean, Forge, Cavalry, no doubt.
Yeah.
Those two, I think, are pretty much given. I think Pacific will be in there, given just how, again, yes, I recognize they're playing against Vancouver, but they looked really dominant. They did. Halifax. Let's be honest. They had a crap year last year.
Think about that. Yeah.
But they're not that far away from being really, really good. And showing, like, they were the better team against Ottawa this past week.
Yeah.
And if they can do it again in the first round of the Canadian Championship, then I think they kind of herald a new era for Halifax. So I would not be surprised to see Halifax as the number 5. And if I'm putting money down, if Ottawa turns it around, then I take back all my worries and put Ottawa the number 4. But if not, I think it's going to be, if Ottawa is not number 4, then they are the worst team in the CPL this year. That's it's literally playoffs or the worst. Just the vibe that I got. And I'm saying they're probably worse even than Vancouver. So if that's the case, so if I'm putting it out there, and again, we haven't seen them play this year yet, but I would put York in that mix as well.
So we have Forge, Calvary,
Pacific, Halifax, and York. I'm going to call York on this one.
So there you go of Jason's, Forge, Calvary, which is second, Pacific third,
York fourth, and then Halifax.
So 6 is going to be Atletico Ottawa.
No, I think 6 would be Valor.
Going to be a shocker of it. Atletico Ottawa going to be 7th.
I'm going to put a caveat in this one here.
So you think
if Vancouver has not scored by the time their home opener rolls around, then I'd put Ottawa 7th. However, if they can get a goal before that home opener, then I think Vancouver goes 7th, and then Ottawa sits in last place. And I'm saying this as an Ottawa boy. I don't take this lightly, but just the vibe I'm getting off that first week match, because there were some changes from the roster from last year.
Yeah, kind of agree that Atletico Ottawa did have a big change in it. In my opinion, I think they should have sticked with Balou Tableau.
Quite possibly.
Just for one season. For just one more season. And just put him in the market for a transfer or just stay with him. Just stay with him for the mid-season, for until the mid of the season.
A transitioning would have been easier, I think, on the team, but you're in the situation that you're in now, and now you have to pull up your socks, get your cleats in the grass, and start finding the back of the net.
And really quick, and this one is really kind of a laughter about Atletico Ottawa, is they said they were going to try to make negotiations with Atiba Hutchinson, with I think it was Fernando Lopez. I think his name. I'm getting his name right for Atletico Ottawa. Is that he was trying to make like 500 likes if you try to make a negotiation with Atiba Hutchinson, because I've heard about Atiba Hutchinson. I think he was going to have his contract terminated with the team he's playing, but it's always that rumor. We don't know yet.
Well, I mean, if those rumors are hanging over the team,
or it's just basically a joke.
But is it though? And I'm not saying like, you know, they need to go after, you know, someone like an Atiba Hutchinson, but I mean, if that's out there and those rumors are, you know, lingering questions with the team, then they're gonna be sitting there going, well, where do we stand? How do you know what? It can't just be Ollie Bassett saving the day. It can't. You have to be better in your own end, and you got to seal the deal when you're on the offensive side of things. I think one player did that this week.
And I think that how really Halifax Wanderers just dominated them. It was actually, I think it was basically the midfield at this point. And they got a player, who was it? I think the key player for Halifax Wanderers was Lorenzo, from France, that played for in a team in France. He's from France. I would say this. There's your key player for the mid. Just keep him as a starter. And I think that you're actually great at that for this team. You have Andre Rapachard, your team captain, and he's also a good key player. And also think about their goalie signing that they got. People thought that he's not going to be that one of the top 3 goalies in the season, and I think about it, he's actually doing well in the opening season.
I will say, if you're looking at top goalies, I don't see them doing much this year, but John Irving for Vancouver did look really good, and let's be honest, he's going to be facing a lot of shots this year, so he's going to have to be good.
Callum Irving. I just look at Callum Irving. There's like he's the cap of the team, so he has to be the key player for Vancouver FC, and basically everybody in Vancouver FC.
Yeah, he looked good,
and
the rest of the team needs to get to that level.
And also Atletico Ottawa, even the loanee, I think Luke Sink, that's a loan from Toronto FC. He's actually doing well for a player that actually came back to the Canadian Premier League.
Oh, I mean, goalies are going to do only so well as the defense in front of them is going to play. And Ottawa broke down in that sense.
And he was also, he's the player that made that long pass to John Essie to actually make the assist to Alia Bassett. I'm like that. That's actually a good play to pass. That's a great quick ending for the first half. I think that was a good signing for Atletico Ottawa. Didn't see that much from Carl Ouimet, also a former Ottawa Fury player.
The next couple of games are going to determine really how Ottawa's season's going to go. If they keep playing like they did, it won't be much.
Yeah. What my predictions is actually going to be for who's going to make the playoffs, I would say this. It is going to be Forge FC going to be number one, for sure. Second place is going to be Calgary FC. When I think about third place and fourth place and fifth place, it's always that question mark for it. But I'm still thinking Pacific FC. It's Pacific FC going to be that third place, but fourth and fifth is a race for those spots. Because when I think about York United and Halifax Wanderers and Atletico Ottawa, even Valor FC, because that's the biggest race for it. Since we didn't see Valor FC.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of like Formula One, right? It's Red Bull, Ferrari, and Mercedes, and then everyone else, pushes for the points that they can.
Yeah, but when York United and Valor comes in for their first match, I'm gonna say this, but whoever wins that first match might be there. But it's how many goals they can make and their key players.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now you have Brian Wright, who just actually was a key player for Atletico Ottawa. That's one of the biggest upsets for Atletico Ottawa. Just now you have Brian Wright, who was the key player for Atletico Ottawa, scoring goals alongside with Alia Bassett. And now he's with York United. So you're going to have a powerhouse of goals with York United. But you still have Mo Babuli, you still have De Rosario, you still have, like, for example, like a Prochasso, still playing for them. I see a lot of key players in York United. So
it sounds like you're leaning York for the 4 or 5 spot.
I still think the 4 and 5 York United definitely, but I think Atletico Ottawa is going to be in it? I think they are. I think Atletico Ottawa makes it.
Okay, so you think Ottawa, I think Halifax for those lower spots.
In the lower spots, I think Atletico Ottawa. But why I didn't pick Valor in it is their roster. I just look at I just think it's exactly what Atletico Ottawa is. But is leaving Yesley as their starter goalie a good fit? Because I seen Yesley as when he played as their backup goalie, and he had potential being their goalie as as their substitute goalie. They signed him, and as their substitute goalie. And yeah, when I look at Whissell, he did play against Vancouver Whitecaps. And there's sometimes he's a tall goalie. He's a tall goalie. I think he might kind of struggle as being a starter goalie.
So you're saying he's got the wingspan, but he doesn't necessarily have the mobility.
My opinion is when you have a young goalie, but look, Gazdov,
who did look really good.
He's 19.
Yeah.
And he was in the Bundesliga on a loan. And he was a loanee player, and he played in Bundesliga. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's not like Vancouver didn't have their chances. Gazdov did look good.
He was good, but for when I look at Whissell right now, playing for Valor, sometimes he kind of struggled. He kind of struggles of it, but he's in my opinion, when I think he's like a regular sometimes, but you still have some weaknesses of playing a starter goalie. I think they should have pursued of getting a starting goalie into it. And there is some, and they got, like, their previous goalie was Jonathan Sirois, and now he's playing for Montreal, like Club de Foot Montreal right now. In my opinion, at this point, now you have Whissell now being the starting goalie. But it was that question: was it that time for him to be the starting goalie? And I always think not yet. I think it would be one more season until he gets it.
A lot of that too has to be the personality too. Like, some people can handle, the sink or swim, introduction to the league, but for some they need to be eased into it. For some they can't just be thrust into the lead spot. It remains to be seen.
Yeah, like for example, if a goalie is like 16 years old and he's getting that senior team first division league starting, be like, we're kind of scared that he might be a not good goalie if he was playing for the Bundesliga.
There's a lot more riding on the Bundesliga than there is the CPL, I think,
and the English Premier League, or if he's going to play the Champions League. Fans will be like, "Wow, he's actually great." And then sooner or later, you're going to figure out he led in 5 goals. We lost 5 by 5.
Yeah.
But I still see Whissell a lot of potential. But in my opinion is, but you're versing, when I think about Atletico Ottawa versus Valor for that 4 or 5 seats, for that playoff seats, you're going to be versing a 29-year-old Nathan Ingham, and you have Sean Melvin with their goalie roster, and you have Whissell, that's basically coming out from League One Ontario. Actually, my bad. I think, the Premier League of Quebec League, the Quebecan League, now is a reserve goalie, comes to substitute goalie, and now he's a starter goalie, which is kind of a big improvement for his age. right now. I think 21 years old. He is. There's a lot of improvement, but I think that his defense back is going to help him. Yeah, Andrew Jean-Baptiste for it, but there's a lot. I think that the defensive of Valor FC is going to help him a lot, but it is that question mark: is the mid and the fronts have that good on the of scoring goals? That's the question mark.
Yeah, there's 5 seats at the table. 4 seem to be already filled, so everyone's playing,
for the 5th.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I always ask that, but it is that question mark for it because you have York United.
Mm-hmm.
I think that their roster is I think they have good on their goalie. Sometimes when I think about the front, it's when I think about York United, sometimes they're not really good at home. Sometimes they struggle at home. I always see at their games.
No, I haven't actually been to a York United game or really had a chance to see a full game. But I mean, you would know this better than I would. What's their crowds like? Like when you take a look at what we just had in week 1, in Ottawa and in Hamilton and in Victoria, you had good crowds, good responsive crowds. What's it like for York?
I look at York. You're challenging yourself against a team that is in Major League Soccer. That's the struggles for York United. But your challenge is not trying to bring in fans from Greater Toronto area, but the York region. You're averaging probably 1,200 fans. That's the average.
That's not good.
It is not good. And that your attendance is holding 4,000. You can't make a sellout crowd. Well, sometimes when you sometimes, well, it's going to be a season opener. Mostly you're going to get for maybe 3,000 fans. And I would love to see a York United game. Sometimes. And or even if they're having a Canadian Championship game.
Because that's coming up soon.
Because, yeah, that is coming soon. And York actually had a lot of fans going to their games when it was York 9. They had a lot of fans coming in. I think in 2019. And that went down. That's the biggest problem into it. When you're averaging more than 2,000 fans, like the average of 2,000 fans or 3,000 fans, why? And you plummet it to basically 1,200 fans. What happened?
Well, I mean, you have to take a look at, recent years, of course, Ontario had some of the strictest COVID restrictions going on as far as live events go. So, I mean, I can appreciate, in some cases, some people not feeling comfortable about going into a large crowd. But I mean, like that, clearly, we're past that now. The crowds in Ottawa, Hamilton, and Victoria all proved that. But the thing with York is that you're GTA. your GTA in arguably the busiest sports time right now. And yes, the Raptors are gone. They're out of the playoffs. Never made it past the play-in tournament. So one less team to worry about. But you've got.
And no longer have to hear that screaming from DeMar DeRozan's daughter.
Oh, you know what? I mean, if you were one of the people that threw threats at her kind of thing, you're a horrible human being. Just going to put that out there. But I mean, like, I get it. And you see that in NCAA tournaments. You see them really, trying to psych out, someone on as far as free throws. You don't necessarily see it from someone else in, the doing that to the home team. But you know what? Like, it's your job to make a free throw. You shot 50%. You can't blame it on a kid. But regardless of, you got the Leafs, who look really good and might actually make it to the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 2004. You're getting close to 20 years here, boys. It's time. You've got the Jays, who actually look really good this year. And while I don't think they're going to be the best team in the AL East, they just took down the best team in the AL East in the Tampa Bay Rays, giving them their first series loss. You've got TFC, who, while they're not killing it, but they're not horrible. They got like what, a 1-6-1 record? Like, they're putting points on the board.
Is it a 1-2-5? That's what I've heard.
They definitely have more draws. I mean, I think it's 1 win, 1 loss, and the rest are draws. But and with a decent goal differential of +1, you're middle of the pack. So they're in it, right?
But they're like in the middle of the Eastern Conference.
You got the Rock, who, yes, they're still playing in Hamilton, but they're still the Toronto Rock. They're doing well, right? But there's a lot that goes on in the GTA. And while the CPL, and this is why they expand, they should go to places that are going to appreciate it. You put a team in a Kitchener or a London if you're going to be in Ontario. You put a team in Saskatoon. It's going to kill out there. York, I do hope the fans come back. And they will, I think, if York does a good run in the playoffs.
I think some York fans are just sometimes always saying, you know what, I'm just going to go to BMO Field, have some time.
Yeah, the bigger team's playing. You want to go, you want those tickets.
And I always think, aren't you supposed to be supporting York? And sometimes people always say that it's just like, for example, you're in the GTA. Yes, everyone knows that you have to sometimes support teams from other areas. But if you're in the York region and you have a team there, I feel like you have to support the teams that you're in.
Yeah, but I mean, the CEPL proved that you can put a team in Scarborough and have it do well. The Scarborough Shooting Stars.
You mean the CEBL?
Yeah, that's what I said, CEBL.
I thought there was a P in there.
No, the CEBL. Yeah. And they proved that you can put teams in, smaller, which, for lack of a better term, suburbs of a larger geographic region and have it work. York, for all intents and purposes, should work. And I'm curious, too, because I know they've been talking about building a new multi-purpose facility in the Brampton area.
Which one? York United?
No, not York United, but like the city of Brampton is looking at making a large multi-purpose facility. They were talking about making a cricket pitch. Because, of course, cricket is actually pretty big in the Brampton area. But if it's a multi-purpose facility, you could easily see a cricket stadium double as a soccer stadium. It could be done.
When I think about Brampton, I always think I think, isn't it the home of soccer legends? Like, for example, Johnson and Osorio, right? And now you have Canadian soccer owners that own us, um, that own a League One team, League One Ontario team, the Simcoe Rovers.
Mm-hmm.
It might be, what was it? Simcoe Valley Rovers FC. I think it's kind of correct about it. They're not playing in the Canadian Championship, which basically League One Ontario's team that's going to be playing in the Canadian Championship is Vaughan, Missouri.
Mm-hmm. Can I make a bold projection on that one?
On which one?
On Vaughan, Missouri.
Vaughan, Missouri.
I'm calling it right now. Vaughan, Missouri makes it to the semifinals of the Canadian Championship.
For Vaughan, Missouri going to the semis?
Yeah.
Or the quarters?
No, I'm calling it for the semis. Hear me out on this one, okay? Because I've been looking at this grid in trying to figure out how the Canadian Championships are going to play out. Okay? Look, match 1, match 2 in your first round, it doesn't really matter because Cavalry is one of the teams and they're going to go all the way to the freaking finals, as far as I'm concerned.
As known as Vaughan, Missouri is saying 2 Major League Soccer teams?
Yeah, okay. You say two soccer teams, but
look, if they were you're versing Club de Foot Montreal from the beginning, and you're going to have a rough time.
I think Vaughan
and then
beats
later
Montreal,
and then later you're going to verse Toronto.
See that's where
that is going to be the same problem. That you're going to have so much problems, and I disagree on saying Vaughan, Missouri will beat them, but I do something I would agree who they would actually beat is Vaughan, Missouri almost beated Halifax Wanderers in a Canadian Championship in an aggregate, almost. So in my opinion is that Vaughan, Missouri could actually beat a Canadian Premier League team.
You don't think they can beat Montreal?
I don't see them beating Club de Foot Montreal.
Hear me out on this one here, okay? Yes, I still recognize that we are early in the season as far as the MLS goes. But hear me out. You have one win for Montreal. One. You have 3 goals only. You have as many goals as you have points in multiple games, and it's not good for Montreal right now. Like, I don't even know. Like, they're bottom of the table, last I checked. They are not playing well this year.
But it might be possible for this time, but I don't see Club de Foot Montreal just basically saying gonna say, okay, we're going to basically lose this one.
Oh, okay, but hear me out though, right? If they come in and they destroy Vaughan, Missouri, as quality of league, and quality of opponent should dictate, Montreal should go in and walk all over them. But the pressure's on Montreal. If they beat Vaughan, Missouri, yay, they beat a League One Ontario team, yay. If they lose to Vaughan, Missouri, that's a low pit that they've sunk themselves into. Vaughan, Missouri gets to come into this with no problems whatsoever. However they play, if they lose, you lost to an MLS team. Okay. But if you win, the momentum you carry going into the next round, even though you're playing TFC in the next round, all of a sudden you make a name for yourself. And I just want to put the stats here, okay? I mentioned like 1 goal, 3 goals only for Montreal and 3 points total. Vaughan Azzurri last year, 76 goals. And I do appreciate it's League One Ontario.
From last season?
From last season. A plus 51 goal differential.
And Club de Foot Montreal?
Definitely not that.
A plus or minus?
Club Montreal right now, if memory serves, has about a minus 17 goal differential.
But the negatives on what I see Vaughan Azzurri, because they had a staff change of they got rid of Patrice, who basically actually is now coaching for Halifax Wanderers. So that's something to get. And some of the Vaughan Azzurri players actually went to Halifax Wanderers. So you have a big one there.
I mean, am I putting stupid money down and saying Vaughan Azzurri is going to win the Canadian Championship? No, I'm not.
No, but
I'm willing to put it down. I would put $1 down on them beating Montreal. I would not be surprised to see Vaughan Azzurri beat Montreal. If that momentum carries against TFC, and if TFC comes into the game playing down to their competition, then you got a chance to make the semis. That would then unfortunately put Vaughan Azzurri against Forge FC, because you have to think Forge is going to make it to the semis.
Like if I was trying to predict who is most likely which.
Yeah, who have you got in the semis? Who are your 4 teams that make it all the way to the semis? I'll tell you mine right now.
But I would not say. But upset, I would put TSS Rovers actually beating Valor.
I could see that, but I don't think after the first round that match doesn't matter, because whoever wins that is probably going to go up against Cavalry.
But you have most likely the top 3 Canadian Premier League teams. Pacific FC already started to have. They already won against Vancouver FC.
Yeah, but I mean, Cavalry looked good in getting the draw against Forge. Pacific looked good against an expansion team in their first regular season game. We need to see more out of Pacific FC before we make the calls if they are that good. It's a good matchup. I like the concept of Pacific FC going up against Cavalry in that first round. That's a good matchup. I just think Cavalry will be better than Pacific in that one.
Kind of agree with that. But so who do you think is going to advance to the quarters?
Okay. So I mean, I don't hate the idea of Rovers, beating
Valor.
Beating Valor, but I've got Cavalry knocking out Pacific. There's no question about that. Rovers, Valor. I mean, it's a coin toss. It really is a coin toss for me. York. I think York knocks out Vancouver. As much as I would like to see Vancouver versus Vancouver in the quarters,
the Whitecaps.
Yeah, that it would still be fun to see. I just don't think they have it in them to beat York. I've already made my insane, crazy prediction that Vaughan Azzurri is going to knock out the CF Montreal. Halifax and Ottawa. That's going to be an interesting one.
It is. I think this is. Is a must watch.
Yeah. If I'm picking the matches, like if I can only watch 3 matches in this first round, I'm going to watch Halifax versus Ottawa. I'm going to watch Vaughan Azzurri versus CF Montreal. And I think I'm probably going to watch Cavalry against Pacific. I think those are the best matches. I think Forge over Laval is a walk. I think Forge just obliterates them.
Yeah, but FC Laval is their first appearance.
Mm-hmm.
And even for example, TSS FC Rovers, it's League One's BC's first appearance.
Yeah.
To being in being added in the Canadian Championship. So
this is going to be their first time really facing a team of that caliber, right? Like
even being in this environment of a championship.
Yeah, I mean, Rovers getting Valor, that's a lucky draw for them, right? Laval's got to go up against Forge. That's not an easy mountain to climb.
And like, but when you think about it's a Quebecan league, if we brought in AS Laval into this and replaced it, like, I think that is one of the most dominant teams in the Quebecan league, since they almost beat York United.
But York is not Forge.
I know. Yeah, York is not Forge. But imagine that if FC Laval actually beat Forge FC.
Okay, you're telling me Laval's going to beat Forge, and then you're telling me that Vaughan can't beat Montreal.
Well, but I'm just saying this, but I still see Forge FC beating them. But it's that always thing. But what if Laval beated Forge FC? Is that going to be the biggest upset that you had? You're versing a champion.
Oh, that would be an upset as far as my bracket, because I'll be honest, Forge FC, I have them going to the finals.
And yeah,
the path for them is clear to the finals. But I mean, yeah, like as far as an upset goes, okay, let me ask you then.
Yeah.
Which would be the bigger upset? Laval beating Forge or Vaughan Azzurri beating Montreal?
I would say Vaughan basically beating Montreal. But see, even for example, what you want to see in as the second also being the biggest upset?
See, I think Laval beating Forge would actually be the bigger upset. And hear me out on this one here,
what?
Okay? If I ask, okay, hypothetical situation. If tomorrow Forge and Montreal play each other, who do you think would win?
Forge versus Club de Foot Montreal?
Yeah.
I would say Forge FC would win.
Yeah.
But I would, because I like, what was it, the 2022 Canadian Championship?
Mm-hmm.
It was a draw. They went to PKs. If Forge FC beated them, that's the biggest upset.
Mm-hmm.
Even when it went to PKs, I still say that's the biggest upset for Club de Foot Montreal. If you're going to go all the way to PKs, and it goes all the way to goalies, I still say that it is still one of the biggest upsets. You still can't even make it from a short round for PKs. I still say Forge FC is really talented in this competition.
Mm. Oh, but that's the thing. Like, as far as the the level of upset or what the bigger upset would be, Forge is a phenomenal team right now, regardless of what league they're in. Forge are really top of their game. So if Laval were to beat a team at the top of their entire league, let's be honest, versus comparing that to if Vaughan can somehow knock out Club de Football Montreal, who's at the bottom of their table, and they are stinking the bed. Laval beating Forge would be the bigger upset to me, only because Laval's beating a team at the top of their game, whereas Vaughan is beating a team that barely shows up.
Yeah, even like Vaughan Azzurri is like even Vaughan Missouri has been into the Canadian Championship for the most appearance for a League One Ontario team.
Mm-hmm.
And you have FC Laval, first appearance from a Quebec in League One Quebec. And then you have League One BC, their first appearance league team, TSS Rovers. Now it's going to be versus Valor FC, and it's going to be in Burnaby. Burnaby, BC, at their home field. That's going to attract fans.
Oh, attract fans, yes. Will it sway? Add a little bit of emotion, a little bit of adrenaline? Yeah, sure, quite possibly. But it might be too much. There might be too much pressure in front of that crowd.
Yeah,
and if the crowd turns,
upsets.
Yeah,
but is that question if Rovers beats Valor?
The thing is, though, we've been sitting here saying Valor isn't even going to make the playoffs for the CPL. So again, you're talking about a team, well, not as bad as Montreal. I mean, you look at the teams in this competition, right? And if you're making a list of the top 3 teams in this entire competition, it's not the 3 MLS teams at the top. You could argue TFC might make the top 3 as far as quality of teams in this league or in this tournament. Vancouver Whitecaps, maybe. Forge, you definitely have to put into the top 3 as far as talent. Cavalry, I think, if they're not number 3, they're probably number 4.
So
Montreal isn't even the best. Like I think Montreal, I could be wrong here. I think Montreal might be right now one of the worst teams in this tournament. Like, if you had FC Vancouver going up against CF Montreal in the first round, you may as well just sit there and say, well, someone's got to win.
Vancouver FC for the Canadian Premier League?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even think Vancouver, might take CF Montreal to kicks. That's my opinion right now of how well CF Montreal is playing. They could turn it around. They have the talent. They have the players, and yes, they are the bottom of the table in a much better league than a League One Ontario. But, I mean, we've seen time and time again in the FA Cup. Every now and then, one of those smaller teams makes a lot of noise.
Yeah. So you have Calgary in quarters. And who you got in Valor versus Rovers?
Valor versus Rovers, it's a coin toss. I'll go with Rovers because I don't know if Valor is going to be able to step up. But I mean, it to me that match doesn't really matter because whoever wins is going to have to face Cavalry.
You have York versus Vancouver Whitecaps.
I've got York on that one.
Versus Whitecaps. Vaughan Missouri versus Toronto FC.
Vaughan Missouri versus Toronto FC. That'd be a fun one. But yes, I have Vaughan Missouri knocking out Montreal.
And
Halifax, Ottawa, that's a coin toss. It's going to be a really, really good match.
So who you think?
I think it's Halifax. And again, I'm saying this as an Ottawa boy. I think it's Halifax.
To be fair on this, I do believe Atletico Ottawa does have It's actually true about this. Atletico Ottawa has repeatedly struggled in the Canadian Championship, but could they actually not lose this time? But
I mean, they walked away with a draw against Ottawa,
and it was a PK. Hoping that doesn't happen again to them.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's the thing: if Ottawa, suffers the slings and arrows of random cards and bad calls, then yeah, it's gonna be Halifax, obviously. But in watching the match, right, especially that first half, Halifax was the better team in the first half.
Yeah.
If Ottawa can watch the tape and correct the mistakes, then Ottawa takes it.
Yeah.
But this is not a game I would put money on, because it really could go either way. And looking ahead to Forge destroys Laval.
Yeah. So quarterfinals, you have Forge against Halifax Wanderers, TFC Vaughan Azzurri, and you have York and Vancouver Whitecaps, Cavalry
and Rovers.
So who you think is semis?
Okay, Cavalry knocks out the Rovers. That's why I said that Rovers win. Sure, that doesn't matter. They're going against Cavalry. Cavalry makes it to the semis. I've got the Whitecaps going into the semis, knocking out York. The Whitecaps aren't bad right now.
Yeah,
they're not. I mean, we're comparing them to Montreal, whatever, right? But I still think the Whitecaps are the better team in comparison to a team like York. Someone's gonna laugh at me right now as I say this. I have Vaughan Azzurri knocking out TFC. You're the one laughing at me, but hear me out.
It's just like maybe,
right? TFC as middle of the pack as they are as far as the standings go, one win and a +1 goal differential.
Yeah, it is kind of that always question mark that are they scoring material? It is that question mark. And when I think about Vaughan Azzurri, could they actually, like, they're going to have a young squad?
Mm-hmm. And if they've made it to that point, that means that they have proven that they can beat an MLS team,
even like their reserve team.
Yeah, you are walking into that quarterfinal with confidence that you've already defied the odds. You're playing with house money at that point. And I think Vaughan Azzurri can take that momentum into the semis. And then, of course, Forge just makes their way into the semis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you have League One Ontario team. So
I have a League One Ontario team knocking out an MLS team
in the semis. 2 Canadian Premier League teams and 1 Major League Soccer team in the semis. Who is in the finals?
I'm going to say the same thing I say for the Canadian Premier League. It's Cavalry versus Forge. As much as I like Vaughan Azzurri as a dark horse to at least get to the semis, I have to think realistically. And Forge is a juggernaut. Like, in order to get to that point, Vaughan has to knock out the absolute worst MLS team, the most mid team in the MLS right now in TFC, and then you have to face Forge.
Yeah, and Calgary FC has beaten Vancouver Whitecaps.
Mm-hmm.
And Vancouver Whitecaps has lost to Canadian Premier League teams in the Canadian Championship. And now they finally defeated a Canadian Premier League team, which is York United.
Mm-hmm.
But it is that question: did they get their mojo back? of trying to beat a Canadian Premier League team.
Yeah. I mean,
but is it worth that? Now we know all the steps to beating Canadian Premier League team, and then later you're going to be versing them.
I mean, I think with Vancouver going up against Cavalry, it's not like they would have to, face a team that's much lower. I would sit there and say Cavalry and Forge are on the level of a lot of MLS teams right now, as far as talent and scoring ability.
So, Cavalry and Forge in the finals.
Cavalry wins. And Forge in the finals. Oh, you're gonna make me pick, aren't you?
It has to be. It's the finalist.
I gotta go Forge. As much as I love what Cavalry is doing right now, I gotta go Forge.
Like I think that it's going to go to PKs in the finals.
Oh, I don't doubt that it's going to be a close match. I really wholeheartedly agree that that's going to be a straight up Donnybrook, and it does. I agree. It does not get finished in regulation time.
But
it's Forge.
My prediction for the Canadian Championship is if Pacific FC versus Calgary FC, I do agree Calgary FC goes to the quarterfinals. When I look at TSS FC Rovers versus Valor FC, I do have to give a question mark on that, but I have to go with Valor FC.
Okay.
But it could go, in my opinion, of a prediction of what the score is going to be like, almost kind of a draw. I think Rovers are going to...
It'll be like a 1-0 or something like that.
I think it's going to be a 1-0. But I do see a chance for Rovers to actually kind of win.
It'll be a good match.
But I think it's a team to watch also, because it's their league debut for competing in the Canadian Championship. Also, even for example, for even Vaughan Azzurri versus Club Montreal, that's a watch for for a team that's in the bottom of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I'm all in on Vaughan Azzurri. You know me.
Yeah, but York, but I still have Valor in the quarterfinals.
Mm-hmm.
And York United versus Vancouver FC. That's a big question mark for me. That is a big question mark for it, because you have. I'm just going to say because you're going to have York United going to be playing,
mm-hmm.
and then later you're going to have York playing in a few days of their previous match. So I think their team is going to. I think that Vancouver FC might have a mid there. But Vancouver FC lost 1-0. So I think that it's going to be a short here with not that much goals. So
they lost 1-0. It should have been by more.
But when I say York United, I still think that York United beats Vancouver FC. But I think the biggest upset in that match, if Vancouver FC beats them.
Oh, if Vancouver FC beats York, the quarterfinals being Vancouver FC versus Vancouver Whitecaps is going to be so much fun on the West Coast. But I don't see it happening. But I'd love to see it. I just can't realistically see it.
Yeah, I still have York in the quarters, going to be versus Vancouver Whitecaps. Club de Foot Montreal versus Vaughan Azzurri. I see Club de Foot Montreal going to the quarters. no doubt. But I know you. I know you.
Right now, there's a bunch of people in Vaughan going, no, listen to Jay.
But look, you have. I still see it could be crunched in with not that much goal scoring. That's what I see. But Club de Foot Montreal basically takes it maybe 2-0.
Wow, you really don't think of Vaughan Zerkin that much.
But to be honest, like if Vaughan Missouri was versing, for example, Halifax Wanderers or Vancouver FC, I would say Vaughan Missouri has the advantage here.
Mm-hmm.
Because Vaughan Missouri actually almost beat the Halifax Wanderers. Almost. But Wanderers had the edge of it. But if Vaughan Missouri was versing Atletico Ottawa, maybe I would say that. That's a team to watch. A match to watch.
I'm still on in on Missouri.
But I still see Club de Foot Montreal squeezing in to the next round. Halifax Wanderers versus Atletico Ottawa. I see a draw, or maybe I think there's a win or a draw on this one going to PKs. But I think Atletico Ottawa might actually have it. But if it was PKs, I see Halifax winning it in PKs. But if it was Atletico Ottawa leading in the goals, that's the W for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because a draw is not going to help them.
No.
It's not. Because I think that's also a must watch, because it's this for Canadian for people in Ottawa, I think. But this is something that I think fans are going to get pissed mad about. They're not going to play their home field. They're going to play at York Lions Stadium, which is kind of a bummer. And that game after that is going to be the York versus Vancouver FC.
I mean, maybe that takes the pressure off Ottawa.
I might agree with that. I kind of agree with that. For it, I think, and if you're playing in a neutral site,
then
maybe
no one has the advantage.
No one has the advantage. Maybe Atletico Ottawa might have the advantage here at the point, or no one.
Mm-hmm.
But if I were to say who's gonna win this, I would have to put Atletico Ottawa.
Okay.
Because I think that Atletico Ottawa, I think they're sick and tired of being not always losing in the first round.
Oh, so you have the Maple Leafs of the Canadian Championship.
Or maybe the Ottawa Senators. Not making the playoffs.
It wasn't that long ago that they made it to within a goal of the Stanley Cup final, but
or maybe winning a Stanley Cup.
Okay, it has been a while, but regardless of, let's get back to this.
Or maybe we're just making a joke about the Toronto Maple Leafs, how long it took.
It's been a while. It's been a while. It's been longer since an Ottawa Senators team has had their name etched on the Stanley Cup, and maybe a century or something like that. But still, regardless of. Regardless of, and then who have you got for Forge against Laval? I'm going to assume it's Forge.
It's going to be Forge.
Yeah. All right. So
for a big margin.
Yeah. So quarters. Who have you got?
So Calgary against Valor. Basically, I would say Calgary FC is going to go to semis.
Okay.
It's an easy one for Calgary. And Vancouver Whitecaps is going to go to semis.
Okay, so we have the same semifinal there.
And
TFC Montreal.
TFC goes to the semis. And
then Ottawa Forge.
And Forge just beats Ottawa.
Okay, so Cavalry, Whitecaps, who have you got?
I have Whitecaps in the finals.
Really?
I have to say this because I think they're too. I think you look at Vancouver Whitecaps. They're doing well in major leagues in the league. No question about it. They're better than Toronto FC. They're better than Club de Foot Montreal. But they're actually mid with TFC.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a question if TFC goes to the finals.
Okay, so you got Vancouver in the one final, and then between TFC and Forge.
TFC and Forge. That is. I think seeing TFC and Club de Foot Montreal, I think is it really a must-watch match?
No.
I think the rivalry there in the quarterfinals. I know lots of people are going to go see it in the quarters, but
it'll get the attention because there's two MLS teams.
I see fans. I look at fans saying, I don't like the new structure for the Canadian Championship because now you're going for East versus West Coast. You have one out of the other Eastern Conference teams having a chance to play against the Western Conference teams. It's just like saying, well, you had a chance. It's just basically you're the team that if you're the teams that didn't win you're not the finalist in the Canadian Championship, you wouldn't be in that spot. You wouldn't be in that quarterfinals.
Okay, so Forge,
against the Eastern teams.
Forge TFC.
Because previously it was Club de Foot Montreal and Toronto FC in the quarterfinals, and they would be versing them in the semis. That was what it was, and Vancouver Whitecaps had it easily for it. And you have Toronto FC, Forge in the semis. That's where I see. Which I have Vancouver Whitecaps and Calgary FC. I see Vancouver Whitecaps in the finals. But I have no clue if Toronto FC and Forge FC. That is my...
You're stuck on that one.
I'm stuck on this.
All right. I'm going to put this to you right now. You got $1. You got that loonie. You have to put the money down on someone. Forge or TFC. It's only a loonie, so you lose. It's only a loonie. But you have to pick.
Look, I still have, I have to just basically say this. It is that question mark that Forge FC almost beat Toronto FC for that 2020 Canadian Championship, which it was at the year 2022, went to PKs. Forge FC almost won. But it went all the way for Toronto FC to win that. Like, I couldn't believe it that Forge FC almost beat Toronto FC in that Canadian Championship for the 2020 Canadian Championship. But now, Toronto FC loses to Vancouver Whitecaps. Actually, Toronto FC didn't even beat. I'm losing my mind in 2022 because Vancouver Whitecaps won that. Yeah, Toronto FC lost to Vancouver Whitecaps in PKs.
Well, let's be honest. Everything blurs together in the 2020s, but still, you have to make a choice. 2023, Forge FC, Toronto FC in the semis. Who advances to the final?
I would have to go with Toronto FC again versus Vancouver Whitecaps.
Okay, and who do you have winning it all, though?
It's going to repeat.
Okay.
I don't see Toronto FC beating Vancouver Whitecaps.
All right. So
because I see a good coordinated manager who's coaching the team is really doing well. Where do I see Toronto FC? It's exactly the same thing. And yet, and when I see Toronto FC, what they have advantage, maybe from CONCACAF Champions League, but if they were still in the CONCACAF Champions League, they might have the advantage at this point. I think Toronto FC would beat Vancouver Whitecaps if still Vancouver Whitecaps were still in the CONCACAF Champions League and they were in the semis. I think that Toronto FC would have it. Or maybe Vancouver Whitecaps were in the finals.
So you got Vancouver winning it all. I have Forge winning it all.
But I would still say this. If Forge FC won and they were in the finals, I would still think that Forge FC couldn't. I would still say that maybe Forge FC could actually be Vancouver Whitecaps, or maybe or it could be in the PKs. But if I would say Vancouver Whitecaps versus Calgary FC, I would think that Calgary FC could. That's the reason why I see Calgary FC versus Vancouver Whitecaps and Forge FC versus Toronto FC. Because those are my four, and those are two of these CPL teams bringing upsets.
So we're very close as far as our predictions for getting to the semis.
But you still brought in Vaughan Azzurri.
I still brought in Vaughan Azzurri because I like chaos.
And you had two Canadian Premier League teams in the finalists.
Yep. Again, I like chaos.
Yep. We have a list and we have the tree of it and just bring in some crazy ideas, blah, 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 all that, and trying to locate all. So yeah, Vaughan Azzurri is going to be versus Vancouver Whitecaps. Yeah, Vaughan Azzurri upsets that.
Yeah, no. I'm not that crazy, but we are living in 2023, a year where a 16 seed knocked out a 1 seed in the NCAA March Madness tournament. Yeah. So I think if any crazy prediction is going to happen, this is the year.
The same basketball though. Just like when Seattle lost to the Nuggets in NBA when they had Dikembe Mutombo versus Gary Payton.
Hey, anything can happen, man. Anything can happen.
Yeah, and that's full time in this episode of the Red Leaf Card. Thanks for listening. Until next time, I'm your host Jacob, subbing out.